Good morning, everyone. It's great to see you today. I am really thrilled to introduce Jerry Tolk. Jerry has been building the blocks for his current career when he graduated from the U.S. Army College of Medicine, where he earned a degree in biology. He now works at Fleishman, Hillard, where he focuses on the healthcare industry. He builds partnerships and creates strong teams. He has been hosting training with industry down there for several years and is a key connection for us as communicators and in our professional development opportunities. You may remember him speaking at the last year's forum when he talked about bridging the gap between the armed forces and civilians. Today, he's going to talk about how to bring tactical skills to communications and how you can better utilize those and use them for our missions. So without further ado, I'd like to welcome Mr. Tolk.
Good morning, everybody. Good morning. Outstanding crowd we have here today. So I have about 45 minutes to go through 21 years of information that I learned since my ETS. So pardon me if I speak quickly. Let me save you from taking any notes. As I've done for the last 4 years, this entire presentation will be available to you after. If you are interested or I reference things in previous presentations and you weren't able to get here, for instance, last year's, I have links to 10 free online resources that will help you garner information and access to these tools and be able to do some analytics without any out-of-pocket expenses. How does that sound? All right. Spend money on what we want to spend money on. All right. So I've had an opportunity to work with public affairs in different parts of the Army for several years. And what I can tell you is that I am immensely proud of the progress that the public affairs and the PAO section has had over the last several years. We are very quickly moving from a receptive media avoidance strategy through transparency right into proactive storytelling and narrative. And I've been asked to come here today to unpack some strategy. I got good news and bad news. Good news is this is totally achievable. I'm going to give you 4 tools. And that's part of the bad news, too. There is no one silver bullet. There is no easy trick to this. If there was, I would be retired on a beach doing this by Skype. There's not. But hopefully, with some familiarity of these 4 tools, you can either use them together or in pieces to both develop your narrative, understand your audience a little better, develop a strategy, and most importantly, measure it. If you do not have behavioral KPIs built into your strategy, we're probably wrong. If we are determining the value of our line of effort by how many Facebook likes we have, and that is the main metric, we're wrong. There is so much data, so much information that is currently available to us on digital and non-digital platforms that our ability to be in a state of continuous improvement is there if we seize it. And hopefully these 4 tools will help you do that. All right. Agenda. This is what we're going to go after really quickly. This is me, for those of you who haven't seen this before. Before I stood on a stage like this, I sat in a seat like that. And I think the best things that I learned are here. Situational awareness. You know, I was a young kid, a little loose in the head like everybody else at that age. But really being able to understand your surroundings and assign a value and to understand what influences that audience was really fundamental to me. And throughout my professional career, both domestically and abroad, I built on that core skill set. And honestly, in my job right now, I have a lot of responsibility. I'm very blessed, but it all gets back to relationships and issues management, which cannot be done effectively without situational awareness and teamwork. So why does public affairs exist? You know, before we can apply strategy, we have to understand our own value, what's expected of us, and what we expect from ourselves. And so I put this presentation together with the help of Major Napton, who's sitting right here. He's been assigned to us as part of the TWI program for the last 10 months. And he will be able to tell you that if your head is not in the game, if you don't understand your value to the line of effort, it is really difficult to create metrics and impact that whoever is in command really understands and values. There has to be that alignment. And before, as Confucius would say, before you can align with others, you got to align with yourself. So here's our current mission statement. I got to tell you guys, from an agency perspective, it's a little soft. When I was in from the 90s, 98, we would have called this leaf eater language versus meat eater language. So he took a little stab at it. I'd like to read you something. Public affairs establishes the conditions that lead to confidence in the readiness of America's army. I could have put a period right there. But we went on because we like to be a little long at the tooth. To conduct operations in peacetime and conflict by keeping the American people, the Army, and the world informed. Does that work for anybody here? Yeah? Well, by changing our headset, it plays with our objectives a little bit too. Project readiness, drive institutional credibility, and increase morale. Does everybody here feel like that's part of their job? How about assurance and deterrence? How about public trust and support? And how about global Army brand ambassadorship? Again, that's not prioritized. That's somebody 21 years out trying to put it in some kind of 1 to 4 order. I'm sure there's some great ideas on how to augment that here, but I think that this shows greater alignment to a commander's intent. And so understanding our value is our ability to project value. Huh? If I ever get this clicker right. So I'm going to speed up through here, but again, I'm really proud of the progress that we've made as a public affairs group. I had the pleasure of talking to General Hanna just a few moments before about this progress and some of the future things that the Army is intending, and it's really impressive. Like everything, skip to the end. What we need is a shared understanding of the commander's intent that drives attitudinal and behavioral change, right? So when we talk about strategy and we talk about impact, the impact is attitudinal and behavioral change. Knowing something and not applying it or not doing something about it is useless. They may not have no use educating them in the beginning. So what's it take? Right? This sounds great. Let's drive attitudinal and behavioral change, Jerry. Hey, let's get people to think differently about the Army and be seen as we wish to be seen. Socrates said, before we can have a discussion, we must understand a common set of terms. So we throw words out like strategy, like brand, like influence. So before I start throwing those words around, let me tell you exactly what I mean by them so that it matches your own lexicon. Brand is what you say and how you behave, period. That is your brand, whether it is an individual's, a unit's, a company's, or the Army's. It is what you say and how you behave. Reputation is what everybody else says or thinks about it. That's the difficult one, right? Having discipline, controlling our message, controlling our behavior, we're pretty good at that. Proactively managing how others interpret that information, I think we'd all agree there's some room to grow. So our public affairs activities have to focus on that intersection. This space right here between expectations and experience, we call that the authenticity gap. Larger the gap, less trust. Tighter the gap, more trust. Let me take it to a point everybody can understand. Apple makes beautiful, delicate things. Everybody agree? They're pretty clear. You never see an Apple commercial with them dropping the phone or smashing. You know, you see the Samsung Q10 with the crunk guy spilling champagne on it, but you will not see an Apple phone because consistent with their brand, they show you beauty and the delicateness of their brand. So when you walk in, you don't expect to drop your iPad Air on the floor without buying a big Defender case for it. Right? There is a tight gap between what the brand expresses and what everybody else says about it. There's science behind this. So we looked at what drives reputation based on a brand's behavior. We do this research across 12 to 15 countries. It'll have about 15 to 20,000 participants in it each year. There's a ton of data, and it is all available. This is our website, centeronreputation.com. So again, this will be in your presentation. You can follow up. It's free. Peruse it. If you don't understand or you have any questions, please give me a call. I always share my contact information so you can follow up. And kudos to the 8 or 10 of you that I've spoken to over the year about different things going on in different parts of the country and the world. So we took this because very candidly, it was not built for a military audience. It was purpose-built for corporate reputation and consumer understanding and behavior. But this wheel, I don't know if you can see it, it's broken up into 3 buckets: management, behavior, consumer benefits, and societal outcomes. And you can see where that would be directly applicable to ours, but we took some liberty. Regional audiences in green are community engagement, recruiting. Crossover audiences are really here and serving the US people who are our customer, right? And like most customers, or like most shops, we draw our workforce from our catchment area immediately around. So there's already some built-in connectivity and shared values there. And then we have our internal audiences, which really should never be forgotten in any of our missions, especially during external comms, because most internal folks first get news through external comms. Think about how many people in your units get their news on their mobile device, and how many visit your intranet or command page, right? So we broke this into 3 buckets. There are 9 drivers. Like I said, there's a tremendous amount of research. If you have a duty station in one of these 12 countries, I think you'll find it really impressive, and we have our previous years. But I'm not here to talk about me. I'm here to talk about you. So we're going to unpack this, right? And as I warned a little bit before, there is no one silver bullet here. Unfortunately, we're going to have to work. So before we move on, I just want to go over 3 important things that I've sort of covered already. PAOs are more effective when we are in a proactive posture. We in agreement? We can and should contribute to Army readiness and morale. Are we in agreement? Authentic programming drives positive brand and reputation. You don't have to be in agreement. Just trust me on that one. So what do we have here? We got our first tool. This tool is typically used to start to think through a message, okay? And so it's a communications development model. Do not think that you should use this one tool and you're done. But nobody likes to start with a blank piece of paper. So I took some liberties based on limited information. We filled some stuff in, okay? So I just want to make sure I didn't skip anything. All right, come on. So here, we start with our target audience. Who are we looking to inform, to educate, or to drive attitudinal and behavioral change with? So here we got allies and foes, we have our community, we have internal formations, right? Roughly blocked off of the slide that was last. Now you got to do some soul searching and be honest with yourself about what their current opinion of you is. If you don't know, if you're new to the unit, send out a survey. There's a ton of free tools. And I have previous presentations that show you how to do this. But start to understand, right? Without that situational awareness, there is nothing that you can effectively put into your strategy. If you're not aware, you're the wrong person to be leading the strategy. Or you need to build a tribe around you that has that requisite information. Then, it's pretty easy. This is the easy part. Find the desired opinion. Here's the work, the motivational message. it's not just about us. Our audience gets a vote. And so we need to be developing communications that has a shared agenda, shared interests. In marketing communications in corporate, we do an audience analysis of who the communication is intended to reach. We list and prioritize their values based on data, and we arrange the language and the priority of how we put things in everything from a press release to a tweet to long-form content on LinkedIn to paper invites, and we align that content against how they prioritize their interests. We still tell our whole story, but we're rearranging it to align interests. Does that make sense? That's what takes information from educational to motivational. The more that you can align it with somebody's own interests. And so then we think about vehicles for communication. Certain things are visual platforms versus non-visual platforms. Certain things are experiential. So we use PESO, paid, earned, shared, owned. I also drive in experiential because there is nothing more impressive than shaking somebody's hand and hearing their story. Okay, so now we kind of got an idea of who we want to talk to. We kind of have an idea of what we want to say. So our next tool puts something, and for those of you who've been here, who were here last year, you'll remember the readiness adoption pathway. Here, we further explore our audience mindset, or what we would call in marketing the consumer journey. And here are the brand prompts. Marketing, we'll call them command prompts here. So again, not really wanting to start with an empty page, took some liberties to fill it in. "21 years from my ETS date, I do not want to presume what is going on in OUS battlefields. What I want to do is to give you the tools so that you can apply your intimate knowledge and make an effective campaign." So what I've chosen to do for my examples are stay domestic and follow on through the story of connectivity that I was doing last year, the connectivity between the US citizenry and the military that protects their values and way of life. So what do I, having benefited from now decades on both sides, for our awareness statement we have, "My hometown soldiers are good people that defend freedom, deter aggression, and save lives around the world. I have a chance to meet them." Does that work for anybody here? So what do they have to consider to want to change their sense? Because look, I've lived around an Army base too, and I know that the economic impact is fantastic, and the mayor wants it, and others want it. Friday and Saturday nights, we don't always show our best face. And so how do we strike that balance, right? Because we know from science, if somebody hears a message 5 to 7 times, they're more likely to do it or pay attention to it or retain it than if they're only seeing it once or twice. Well, that bad behavior is pretty limited interactions. So we have an opportunity to push down those results, similar to search, right, by creating a higher frequency of messaging and experience that demonstrates our professionalism. So the engagement from a brand perspective is wanting to learn more. It's taking this awareness, answering some questions about it, and driving an interaction. Now, what that interaction might look like, I'm going to take some guesses, but we're going to play with some ideas. But the very idea is to draw them into an experience. Who here knows about the CASTLE program? Okay, so CASTLE programs, I believe under recruiting, and it takes some of our great officers and leaders and puts them out into the community, exposes the community to the Army by putting the Army out into the community, usually through sports and other things where we select great candidates for recruiting. I want to bring the citizenry in. Remember in 1996, I was stationed at Fort Hamilton, and we hosted the New York City Festival. So if you can imagine taking part of Fort Hamilton and opening up to Brooklyn, New York. Crazy. But the commander was really smart. Got in extra MPs, made it feel really safe, made it feel really secure. We had a ton of medics and doctors walking around in BDUs, talking to moms. We gave out free bottled water or big tubs of water. We really made them see us as shared values. Hey, we're parents of kids. Hey, we're trained to do other things besides break and kill. And hey, we like to have a good, fun time that's family-oriented, right? And the connectivity between Fort Hamilton and that immediate Brooklyn neighborhood increased tremendously. Now, what was the motivation to do that? It was not because the commander liked going to a festival. And it certainly wasn't the idea of bringing Brooklyn, New York onto the base. But for those of you who might have been stationed in the area several years before 1994, somebody had built the guardhouse really poorly positioned under an overpass, and when it rained heavily, the water used to sheet right in front of the guard's window, and you couldn't see anything. And a lone MP got jumped by like 20 kids, and she decided not to draw her weapon and take a civilian life, and got hurt instead in the process. So we decided that, yeah, sure, we could increase security, we can move the guardhouse, but what we really needed to do was create value, right? Because you don't hurt things that you care about. So this idea is to create a better sense of value and care between a base and what's outside the gate, so there is less intent to malign it, to blame it, or to do it harm. Does that make sense? That's the reason for the strategy. Post-engagement experience. So after somebody engages with you, you gotta follow up. How sucky is it when you give somebody a business card or you have a good meeting or even maybe you have a good conversation at the bar and you want to follow up and have another day and they ghost. It just goes dead. You kind of feel transactional. You kind of feel used. And what you don't feel is valued. And here's what I'm talking about KPI. Tie it to a behavior. Be able to walk into your commander's office and say, sir, we have moved behavior. I can show you intent because people are taking time and actions out of their day. And here at the bottom are a bunch of command prompts that you can do to move people along this journey. Everything from media engagements and command messaging. This is something I want to show right here. So this is part of the core of the idea of thinking about what would that engagement look like? So remember when we talked about situational awareness a couple slides ago and really understanding our audience and what they value? Well, here in the US, there are 3 values that we share in the military and in our civilian world. Sports, art, music, right? Sports, art, music. So those are 3 really strong points of connectivity that we can use to project our Army story. So, we now know a little bit about our audience. We now know a little bit about what we want them to think and do at the end of the program. How do we build a strategic program working through these insights that will actually drive that behavior? So, at the top, you have phase 1 broken into 2 pieces. We call that foundation building. Second part, you have external and internal deployment. Remember we talked about earlier, internal communications are just as important as external communications, but they have to be congruent because a lot of your internal audiences will get their information first from an external source. Then over here, I promised work. Here's the work proposed. Here's the command prompts. At the bottom, last but certainly not least, are our KPIs. Those are key performance indicators, right? Measurement, metrics, whatever we want to call them. Everybody following along so far? Am I doing on time, Major? Okay. No, did that one? Come on, work with me. Work with me. One more time. There we go. Nope. There we go. So, positioning. We have to develop a value proposition for neighbors to be more involved with their Army. Could be sports, music, arts, outdoorsmanship. We have a lot of assets that are of value in today's community. When I think about Fort Hamilton, I think about that real estate. I think about that parade field. I think about soccer games going on. I think about a community art festival going on. I think about a music or even an amateur band contest. I don't know if you guys have mini bands. I'm not talking about the Army band. I'm talking about music, people on post who are musically inclined or put together small bands. Look, music, sports, outdoorsmanship, being an active adult are both the people we want to attract. They tend to be alphas in their neighborhood, right? And it is a more informed discussion based on shared values rather than trying to tell a pre-scripted story to a moderately interested audience. Command prompts. Look, we can, we can create a symbiotic offering and then a mutually attended activity that highlights shared values in the community is ultimately what we're looking for. We're going to build it. We're going to go back to that audience mapping. We need to narrow the choices of what we're going to do in our positioning so that it matters to both our folks and to leadership, because that ups participation. And I would get it to something that you can explain to your commander as a result at the end of a multi-year campaign. We should be the base that is known for. Now again, commanders often want their unit to be known for something, so it makes sense for our base to be known for something. And our base can certainly be known for something that is of value to the community. Because after all, we are Americans. We're just working a different job. So we spearhead a working session to identify the space, channels. Who here has a personal news network? No? You should. You should have 5 to 10 fellow PAOs or the mayor or influencers around your command that is your private news. If you're getting news because you read it in the paper or on Twitter, you're behind the curve of situational awareness. Whoever wrote that content is where you need to be. So think about your tribe, right? Think about that group around you that will build your personal news network. Bring them to your working group. This phase, you're going to have a completed influencer target list. You're going to have some positive interaction. And you're going to be building a program that takes in multiple points of view through this body of advocates. Does that make sense so far? Now we get into the fun. Audience-based campaigns. The work is not developing one set of messages or one program and saying, hey, everybody, here it is. That's really me-focused. Here's my program that I put up for you. Please come to it, right? Gives me all the credit, puts the work on you. Why not have something that, hey, this is a community put together. Here are our community leaders that are representing the effort, right? And here are ways that we are going to invite you, we are going to welcome you, or we are going to play, draw, sport, jam, whatever we are going to do with you, rather than what you are going to do and what I am going to do. I know it sounds like a semantical difference, but it is not. Personalize the invitations. Nobody likes getting a blast email. What do y'all do when you get the blast email? It doesn't even have your name on it. Hit delete. All right? Take a minute. You only have 10 or 12 influencers. Change the first paragraph 10 or 12 times. It's not that hard. It just takes a little time and methodical effort. Identify SMEs and conduct message training. Before you go out, make sure that that tribe that you've built this are all excited about the same things, are all telling the same story. They may flex it a little bit different for who they're speaking it to, but as soon as you build the program, You train people on expressing the program before it is stood up. So often we stand up a program, the people who are involved and intimately understand its construction and purpose are not the people media training those who are representing it out to the field. So the PAO has a role at program formation, right, to understand its intent and to get training on communicating its intent before launch. So that buzz, that talking about it of, hey, how's that program doing, right? It's not haphazard. There is a consistent message track that demonstrates confidence and progress. And so train your SMEs. Don't make sure that you're not the only one well-versed on the program. Does that make sense? And then we're gonna, obviously, conduct social media, develop metrics, launch. Here, I'm kind of fond of soccer. Anybody play soccer? Yep, little pickup games once in a while. Love it. It's competitive, it's friendly. For the most part, we keep our hands off each other, a little knee, a little hip check once in a while. Nobody goes home with a torn ACL. I meet the most interesting people there. I meet captains of industry, and I meet janitors. I meet people who are working. I meet people who are in between jobs and looking for a job. You get all sorts of walks of life that come together with one shared value, sport. So fine, I did sporting event scrimmage, like be the base that's known at having great weekend soccer tourneys. That was my guess. Make it whatever works for you, but it's not just you as an individual. When I say what works for you, it's what works for your installation, and most importantly, the community around it. And internal comms. We need to create unit-wide excitement and energy. You could have an open tryout for your soccer team. We could look at, I know, cost, but we could look at a jersey. Or we could look at some other morale-building involvement, right, that allows people to compete for the opportunity to represent the base and then represent with the community. We could only have one team. And here's the thing. We don't have to win the soccer tournament. In fact, in most cases, it would probably be better if we didn't. It's not from a competition perspective. What this is doing is giving us a platform to recognize our shared interests, right? And early on in the program, it's going to be really hard to get all the civilians for just congratulating us on a great game, and we should be standing at the head of the podium. How much awesomer would it be? Is that even a word anymore? Would it be if we're congratulating our citizenry, if we're recognizing them instead of just one of our own? That really makes them feel drawn into our program. And since it's sports, it's visual. We got TV, we got Twitter, we have all of our social programs, we can put out press releases, and we can count more than likes, which is really important. As this builds, because I said it was a platform, you can collect people's email addresses. You can follow up with them. You can send them a survey. Hey, how are we doing? You could ask 5 questions about the soccer tourney, another 5 questions about the base, and start to develop active listening for your commander. So by building a platform of interaction, you collect data. Collecting data creates situational awareness, and that helps you align to commander's intent. Does that make sense so far? Okay. This last one, this 4th tool, again, trying to pack 21 years into 45 minutes is no easy job. So often when we develop a program, when we develop a strategy in programming, over time, we get in our own head. And when we're done, it is a kick-ass strategy for us. And so often, we're losing and moving away from the focus on our audience. Part of it could be the approval process, right? In going through, well, does this really tell our best story? It may not, but it might tell the most relevant story to the audience. You don't always have to be the most right. You do have to be the most understood. And relevance drives understanding. So this positioning exercise I like to do at the end. And what it does is it lets us realign and make sure that we're keeping our target audience at the forefront of our thoughts. Does that make sense? You know, by my last slide, I swear I'll get it right. Okay, so who is this program for? Adults and families within the installation surrounding community, thinking 20 miles, about a 30-minute drive. But you can extend or decrease that catchment area. I mean, if you were at the 64th Street Armory in New York, a 20-mile area would be like half of Connecticut. Who? I don't want every adult. That's a scary thought. Like, you don't want the whole bell curve of America walking onto a base. We want people who are active and participate in recreational sports. I don't want to go into the deep psychology of why we picked that audience or the audience research, but you got to pick an audience based on research that works for you. I happen to know that this is a strong audience. Adults who engage in recreational activity. There's also, they actually pair nicely with adults who attend faith-based organizations. So if you go to church or synagogue or mosque on the weekends, you actually have a similar high community index profile. And that means that you are most likely to form relationships with individuals and institutions. You're geared that way. And so within any community, we want to tag the alphas first, right, so that they are most inclined to create a tipping point. Anybody read Malcolm Gladwell's Tipping Point? If you haven't, I highly recommend it. He really uses economics to break the theory that we tell 10 people, they tell 10 people, they 10 tell people, and we get to 10 million in a couple strokes. Guys, the world doesn't work like that. You tell 10 people, 7 people hit delete, 3 people read it, 2 of them forward it, 1 of the people that they forwarded it to posts it somewhere where it gets 40,000 reads. That's the truth about how things go viral. It is not linear multiplication. So this unit, right? So when we're talking about who this is for, we immediately also have to think about that internal audience, right? This unit is a highly trained and professional combat unit who, like you, share the love of sports and an active lifestyle. So remember, if most of your folks are going to learn information from an external source, then when you talk about them in that external source, you better do it in a way that when they read that, they go, yeah, that's me, or somebody I want to be. And what do we want? We want our community to come play, learn, and grow with us, or get involved with us. Because we are you. Our soldiers come from all across America and share the same interests as you do. We are part of your community, and you are part of ours. So, spending time together around shared passions will help bridge that unnecessary civilian-military divide. Best expressed by, I'll leave that up to you, right? You know, you could do a million different monikers, but this allows us to go back and really focus that the for and who lines up to the so. Does that make sense? Okay. So, having a strategy for your strategy. Thought that was fun. We need to do a better job of aligning to commander's intent by driving behavior. Who here plays football or soccer or played a sport where you had to actually chase someone? Your coach will often tell you, don't watch their hands, don't watch their feet, watch their hips. You can't go anywhere without your hips. Same thing. You can't get anything done meaningful without your commander's alignment. And it's not his response or her responsibility to align to you, it's our responsibility to align to them. So if you can't get it directly, if you're talking in circles, do some prep work. Talk to the previous PAO. Talk to the XO. Then go to your commander prepared. And go through some of these exercises. Not that you should walk in with a program that's ready to go and all your KPIs and metrics, but you should be able to reference, sir, I spoke to the last PAO, they identified these couple issues. Also spoke to your XO, they helped me refine some understanding of these issues, and I've begun to do some thinking to develop strategies to tackle these 2 of the 3 issues. Is that what you'd like me focused on, sir? Pretty good way to open up a conversation. Define less than 5 critical audiences. Prioritize them and get time with them. If you are at your desk gathering all your information, you're wrong. Now get it, there are some places, OUS, where you should probably stay on base and stay at your desk. But again, in the US, we should be out meeting people. It's not just about setting up a meeting for the mayor with the general. This is about setting up a meeting with you, with the mayor's staffer, so that you understand from them what data are they collecting on our audience that's public information. Do you guys know that municipalities, states, and the federal government collects a massive amount of information on our population, and it is free to our public? So if you don't have a visceral understanding of the population around your base based on public information, that's a huge missed opportunity. Out of that, bless you, out of that, find 5 audiences that you're going to start with, all right? And they don't always have to be like the mayor, okay? It could be a high school soccer coach. It could be a PTA president at the high school. There are a number of alpha influencers within our community that can unlock greater doors of access. And who's without their understanding of our mission and our intent could be a big gap for detraction. So get them down to 5 audiences, listen to them, understand them. You may not agree with them. That's not up on the board. You don't have to agree with them, but you have to understand them and being able to be articulate in commanding their intent back to your commander so that you can come up with these strategies together. Apply 1 or more of the strategic frameworks. Again, that's kind of a selfish statement up there. If you like them, use them. If you don't, we probably have others. Create a campaign and test it. Do not go with all of your political credibility with your commander on your first campaign. It's just poor form. So instead, think about a trial. Perhaps maybe just in this case example, host 1 soccer game. Invite 1 reporter to cover it and have the commander attend it so that they can see it, or have the XO attend it so that they can see it, you participate in it, and when you go back to discuss the program and the test and the variance, they will have seen it for themselves. If you can't get them to attend, again, we can use the visual arts. And then AAR. This gets back to the very beginning of the presentation about how we think about ourselves and our role. When another part of the Army does a line of effort, there's an after-action report. We should consider getting in the habit of creating after-action reports for our campaigns too. We may not be able to fill in all the boxes. Buildings leveled, 0, right? Relationships fomented, 12. Follow-up activities, permission to scale this program, right? And so there are a number of opportunities that we can adjust the way we behave in creating and reporting campaigns to try and line up a little bit more with commander's intent. Does that make sense? Okay, that's it. Understanding commander's intent will help you demonstrate and deliver value. That's kind of like the Mr. Moto, master of the obvious statement, right? Knowing audiences and their motivation will help garner interest and involvement. Again, a Mr. Moto statement, but it is so often overlooked. We love telling our own story. We just got to tell it in a way so that our audience feels like it's their story. Build a measurable campaign. And I implore you to think beyond peso. Think beyond paid, which we very little do outside of recruiting anyway. Think beyond earned. Think beyond social. Think beyond your website. think about how you can measure how people are behaving. Don't do it alone. Talked about the private news network, personal news network. I got to tell you, that was the lowest hand count I've seen in 5 years. I hope that's not an intentional change of posture. I can tell you that as a senior executive at Omnicom, without my personal news network, I'd be some VP desk jockey in a cubicle. You have got to develop a tribe so that you can counsel your commanders about what's coming, not what's here or what was here yesterday. Never give up. I talked about this being work. I've been kind of cavalier up here. It's what you get to do after you're a civilian for 21 years. But the truth of it is this is hard work. From the early days of PAO, I want you to appreciate where you are right now. Men and women, we live in the information age. To a modern combat commander, you're their information warrior. If we cannot create alignment between that gross reality, right, and that finite mission, then we got to go back to school. Because since we were a baby, we've made a noise to drive attitudinal and behavioral change. We're wet, we're hungry, we're bored. We make a noise. The only reason to communicate is to drive awareness and ultimately attitudinal and behavioral change. I want to be changed, I want to be fed. I'm talking to somebody, I would like them to respond, or I would like them to listen and do what I've asked them to do. I ask them a question, I expect a response. When somebody's walking up and I'm talking to somebody and I give them the eyes, I expect them to know to hang back for 3 or 4 minutes and let me finish my conversation. There is no reason to communicate unless we are driving attitudinal and behavioral change through education and awareness. So if we are doing a line of effort, make sure that that's built in. Make sure that you can understand if that's effective, and when it is not, don't give up. Go back to your frameworks, find another way. The third time it doesn't work, call me. Questions? Easy. Really, guys? Sweet. Got one?
Hi, Colonel Downey with the Defense Information School. I've watched your pitch for years, and went to my master's program where we learned all about exactly what you're talking about, how to drive attitudinal and change. I'm going to turn to our audience. How many of you have actively measured changes in attitude, behavior, and opinion before and after? How many have gotten baselines and done it and demonstrated active change in awareness, attitude, and behavior change? How many? No kidding, full. So a good half to 3/4. Do you feel like you had the resources to be able to do that? Okay. Do you feel like you had adequate training to prepare you to be able to do that in a way that was reliable? Right, right. So what you're preaching is pure gold, and it's connected to industry best practices. What our doctrine currently has and the training that's behind it doesn't get us there. Year after year, you're showing us the path to actual change and actual value added. And it looks like there was more hands than I expected. Many have done individual work or creatively gotten around what they've been presented in order to achieve these outcomes. I'm interested in a systemic approach to actually building information warriors that know how to do that so that it's routine. It's not an exception. They didn't have to go through extra hoops in order to get there. That's the standard, and that there are others that even go further beyond.
So let me offer 3 possibilities because,
Yeah.
Colonel, I could not agree more, right? Again, to know and feel like you can't do feels pretty unempowered. So thank you to General Hanna, and before him, Omar Jones, for General Frost, for having me come up and share it. But again, 21 years and 45 minutes is a really tough row to hoe. So I offer you 3 solutions. First is do whatever you can to attend these. The second thing is when you attend these, you have access to this information, so you can pull down their online resources. So the first thing is get here and get the information. The second thing I would offer you is that I am available. I am not paid to be here. I come every year because it's my passion and because I'm part of the Soldier for Life program. I know you don't have to raise your hand. I know that the last year I've worked with 8 or 10 of you. Previous year before that it was about 5 or 6. My first year, only one person called me after. I would encourage you to call me as a resource to work through. It's nice to have another adult at the table to think through some challenges. But what we need to be doing this third part is train the trainers. There were a handful, so you get a really good perspective from here, Colonel. There was a handful of hands that shot right up. And to me, that says I'm doing it, I'm confident, it's part of what I do. A couple are like, yeah, what I'm doing kind of qualifies for that, and I should probably have my hand up, right? And that is the desire, that intends a desire to do it, an attempt to do it, maybe, right? And probably a requirement of more resources and training. So if we can get a handful of us, based on the size of this room, 200, you need about 8 to 12 people who are really fluent in this, who could maybe be that adult with a security clearance that could start to work within PAOs. So build that, build the information, build an asymmetrical resource, right, that you can call once in a while to do something difficult, and have a train the trainer program to take this from 1 to many to 1 to 12 intensely, and then 12 to many on an ongoing basis. The third, and this will be a shameless plug, so I'm apologize, you can cut this from the tape later. The Army recently realigned its advertising, marketing, public relations, communications, like agency relationships, right? There's a big thing in the paper about it. I would strongly recommend that the most senior of the leadership lean into that relationship, because it's going to impact recruiting, and there's morale, and there's advertising, and there's all these different parts of it. And I would suggest to lean into it, because there are tools, resources, and professionals within that that are highly interested in knowing what's going on and how to take these strategies and get information in the field. One of the most challenging things in developing strategy is the strategy for thousands is often divided by 5 or less people. Here's the rub. Those 5 people can barely name 5 people that don't report to them that are going to be responsible for implementing the strategy, right? That there aren't direct reports. So what you have is this amazing disconnect. And in that room, and I've had the pleasure of being in that room hundreds of times, Jeff Immelt, GE, when, post-Katrina, when we went and rescued hospitals all across New Orleans, combination of KLM and Air France. I launched $4 prescriptions for Walmart. Some really, really big deals with the most senior of people. And the question that always comes up that nobody has an answer to, what do people on the front line think? How's this going to work in the store? So your desire to participate in that larger infrastructure that the Army just invested in, whether it's listening to information, being able to pitch ideas into the huddle, may give you an opportunity to bring some of this back more to your masses. Does that make sense? Sure. Anyone? Bueller? Bueller? Showing my age. Slides are on PDF already, and they are in Major Napton or Colonel Bloom, or they're looking along the front row. I will leave my USB key with, come on, show of hands, anyone? Okay. Major Napton, I'll give the USB to you if you could email it around. Okay, perfect. So they should be available today from me, and then we'll get to you as soon as it makes it through the process. But yes, I always leave it behind. I would also strongly recommend you pull last year's. If you really want to tell an Army story of the American people, pull last year's. On my last slide, I had 10 free online resources. So gather information. It's a way to do a free survey that's still secure, and it's HIPAA secure. So if you need to do healthcare or something like that. If you wanted to look at your information and overlay it with other populations, you can do there. There are free data analytics tools. There are free research tools. So listed out a bunch of tools. And coming from this presentation, again, I would ask as a follow-up, each of you, visit the Center on Reputation. It's also a good read for your commanders if they really want to understand the power of what you do. So I leave it here. It'll get to you as fast as the Army allows. Sorry. Anyone else? That's all we have time for. Thank you very much.